All right, let's talk about those massive problems. You know the ones I mean, the ones that feel just impossible. The kind of goal that's so big, so hairy, you just don't know where to start. Well, today we're going to build a mental toolkit. We're going to borrow some powerful frameworks from the world's absolute best thinkers and strategists to help you tackle those exact kinds of challenges.
I mean, have you ever faced a problem that just felt impossible? We've all been there, right? You're just staring at this thing. Maybe it's starting a new business or a huge project at work or even making a big life change, and you have no clue where to even begin. That feeling of being completely and totally stuck. Yeah, it's something we all know. But what if there was a better way, a structured way to think through that chaos? See, we're not just going to list off some boring concepts today. No, we're actually going on a journey together. We're going to build, piece by piece, this amazing mental toolkit. The goal? To turn that overwhelming chaos into crystal clear clarity and to transform those impossible problems into puzzles that are just waiting to be solved. So, where do we start? Well, think about it like building a house. Every great construction project has to start with a solid foundation. You can't build up until you first dig down, way down, to what is absolutely fundamentally true. And that's where our first tool comes in, first principles thinking. It's all about breaking down a complicated problem into its most basic core elements. You're not just trying to make small improvements on what's already there. Nope, you're questioning everything. It's kind of like taking a really complicated Lego model, pulling it completely apart, and looking at the individual bricks to figure out what you can really build. You know who's a huge fan of this? Elon Musk. When he decided to get into the rocket business, he didn't just accept that rockets were insanely expensive. Instead, he asked a first principles question. What is a rocket actually made of? Well, it's made of things like aluminum alloys, titanium, copper. So he went and priced out the raw materials on the market and, get this, he found they were only about 2% of a rocket's total cost. The real problem wasn't the stuff itself. It was all the assumptions and old ways of doing things that were baked into the manufacturing process. That's a huge breakthrough, right? Okay, so how can you actually do this yourself? A super simple but powerful technique is the 5 whys, and it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You take a problem, and then you just keep asking why over and over again, kind of like a little kid. And what happens is, after you've peeled back a few layers, you get past all the surface level stuff and right down to the real root cause of the problem. Okay, so now our foundation is set. We've dug down and we're standing on the solid ground of first principles. What's next? Well, now it's time to draw up the blueprint. This is all about taking that giant, scary mountain of a problem and breaking it down into a nice, neat pile of manageable stones. The fancy term for this is problem decomposition, but really it's just the super important skill of taking a huge, intimidating goal and chopping it up into smaller, bite-sized pieces. It's how you go from that "I'm so overwhelmed" feeling to having a clear, step-by-step plan you can actually work with. And the benefits? Oh, they're huge. First off, it just makes things simpler, right? You can actually focus on one little piece at a time instead of trying to juggle everything. If you're working with a team, it makes it way easier to divide up the work. And this is a big one. If something breaks, it's so much easier to find the problem in one small part than to search through the entire complicated mess. So how you do it? Well, it's a pretty straightforward process. Step 1, be super, super clear about what the problem actually is. Step 2, figure out the main chunks, the big components. Then, step 3 is to break those chunks down into even smaller pieces. And finally, and this part is absolutely crucial, you have to prioritize and sequence everything. You got to ask what has to happen first and what can only happen after something else is done. All right, you've got your foundation, you've broken the problem down into a detailed blueprint of all the little pieces. But where are you actually going with all this? You can have a pile of bricks and a perfect blueprint, but they don't magically become a house. You need a vision of what that final house is supposed to look like. And that brings us to our third tool, strategic thinking. This is the framework that gives you a direction, a destination. It's your map. It boils down to answering 3 really simple but incredibly powerful questions. First, where are we right now? Be honest. Second, where exactly do we want to be? And third, how in the world are we going to get from here to there? Now, the key to all of this is that second question. Where do we want to be? That's your vision. It's about painting this vivid, compelling picture of the future. A really powerful vision acts like a North Star. It's that one fixed point on the horizon that everyone can look to, making sure you're all moving in the same direction, even when you're working on totally different pieces of the puzzle. It's what inspires everyone to keep going. Okay, let's recap. You've got your solid foundation, you've got your detailed blueprint, and you've got your North Star destination. You're ready to start, right? But what happens when life happens? What happens when a storm rolls in while you're building or the price of your materials skyrockets overnight? Because let's face it, the real world is messy. It's unpredictable. There's a famous saying in the military, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And for us, that enemy is just reality. So we need a tool that's not rigid. We need something dynamic that helps us move and adapt when things get chaotic. And this is where our final framework comes in, the OODA loop. It was developed by a fighter pilot and military strategist named John Boyd, and it's a super fast decision cycle for dealing with exactly this kind of mess. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. You observe what's going on, you orient yourself to make sense of it all, you decide what to do, and you act. Then boom, you're right back at the beginning of the loop, doing it all over again. And this idea, it's not new. It's absolutely timeless. It's all about being able to operate faster and smarter than whatever is happening around you. Sun Tzu wrote about this centuries ago. The basic idea is, if you can see what's happening, make sense of it, and act faster than your opponent or your problem, you're the one in control. You get to call the shots. But here's the secret sauce, the most important part of the whole loop. According to Boyd, it's not observing or acting, it's orienting. That O is your mental engine. It's how you process everything you see. It's shaped by your experience, your knowledge, your culture. It's your entire perception of reality. And here's the key. Whoever can build a better, faster, more accurate orientation wins. Simple as that. So let's bring it all home. We've walked through 4 really powerful mental frameworks. Now let's put them all together and see what our complete toolkit for solving impossible problems looks like. Here it is, the whole shebang. You start with first principles, asking what is fundamentally true. That lets you lay your solid foundation. Next, use decomposition, asking what are all the pieces. That's how you draw your blueprint. Then comes strategic thinking, where you ask, where are we going? That's you charting the course with your North Star. And finally, you have the OODA loop, constantly asking, how do we adapt right now? That's how you actually navigate the journey through the messy terrain of the real world. You know, when you put it all together, what these frameworks really teach us is that uncertainty, it's not something we should be afraid of. It's actually the raw material for opportunity. When you learn to think in this structured yet flexible way, you can take all that ambiguity and turn it into your biggest advantage. So I'll leave you with this question. What impossible thing are you going to build?